excited and intrigued by this event for the reason being that I think many of us are increasingly focused on cybersecurity and the challenges around living in a digital world, but perhaps not every business is putting this front and center to their business planning. So just to set the scene before we head into our speakers, every quarter the Chambers of Commerce across the UK carry out a quarterly economic survey which looks at the key barometers of how the business community is faring as the economy evolves. Every quarter we have an opportunity to drop in a couple of questions about a key topic that we're particularly interested in. And this quarter we looked at the issues around cybersecurity, both from a point of view of how businesses are thinking about that issue, how they're beginning to grapple with that issue, and the type of support they feel that they may need or they will need as we increasingly live more and more of our professional lives online. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Steve Hughes from Policy Points, who's going to run through for you the feedback from that survey, which came from over 570 businesses in South Yorkshire. We've then got a really, really great panel of speakers who are going to be talking about cybersecurity from a whole range of perspectives. At the end of those speakers, none of whom are going to speak for particularly long, I will attempt to chair the panel discussion and give everybody on the call the opportunity to raise questions with the experts who have arrived today. We've only got now 57 minutes before we all have to dash and go and do other things. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Steve, who will go through the results, and then ahead of each speaker, I'll just make a brief introduction so you know who's going to be talking to you. In the meantime, settle in, sit back. This call's being recorded, and hopefully you'll find this interesting. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks very much, Alexis. I'm now going to attempt to share my screen with a couple of slides. Okay, so as Alexis said, these were the questions. I'm going to show you the results of some questions we added into the quarterly economic survey. Response rates of over 570 businesses is pretty good. It gives us a pretty good basis to get an insight into what businesses are thinking about cybersecurity. There's 4 questions I'll take you through now. The first one related to how high a priority cybersecurity is for businesses at present. And around 85% of businesses said it was either a high priority or a very high priority. So it says bottom 2 bars on that graph there. Now, that obviously means that there's 15% of businesses that either regard it as a very low priority or neither. Then here in chart 2 is how confident businesses are that they could protect themselves from a cyber attack if it happened today. Around 90%, so these kind of bottom 3 bars here, had some type of confidence that they could protect themselves from a cyber attack if it happened today. I think what's quite interesting is to compare some of the results from chart 1 and chart 2. So in chart 1, 50% or almost 50% of businesses said they had cybersecurity was a very high priority, and yet only 15% of businesses or thereabouts were extremely confident that they could protect themselves. So possibly a little bit of a mismatch there, even though generally there is some form of confidence about protection. Next, we asked if businesses became aware of a cyber attack, where they would go to for external support to get help. We gave them a long list of options and they could pick more than one. What came out on top by quite a distance was a private IT support provider. So 60% or 3 in 5 businesses thought that's where they'd go for external support. Next on the list was the National Cyber Security Centre. 30% said they may go there for external support, and close behind was the local police. Around a quarter said that's where they would go. Of the other options that were offered, but much further down the list, the council was quite low down the list, trade bodies were quite low down the list as well. But interestingly as well, almost 13% said they didn't know where they would go for their external support if a cyber attack occurred. We also asked where businesses currently get their support from, and again, private IT support providers was front and center of where businesses currently get just general cyber security advice and support. And finally, we asked what would be helpful in improving a business's understanding of cybersecurity issues. A clear result out on top there, over 45% of respondents said online training courses. And then you've got this kind of grouping in the middle. Again, businesses could tick more than one of several options for where they might go for cybersecurity issues, including, again, private IT support or newsletters, websites, workshops, in-house training. And then down at the bottom of the list, where there's little kind of interest, is help desk and telephone support, and academic-based support partner as well. And that's it, really. So that's just an intro to the 4 questions we had in this quarter's QS and what businesses told us about cybersecurity.
Thanks, Steve. I was really struck when I saw those results the other week that how many businesses saw it as a big issue. There was relative confidence to be able to address this, but a lot of businesses would respond by reaching out to the private market, which is inherently, a good thing and a sensible thing. But perhaps there's more we can do as in a region to give an explanation of the framework that combines both private providers, but also the police and other national agencies as to the overall response that can be provided to and support that can be provided to businesses. But it's good to start to set the scene. We're going to change tack now. Really pleased to say hello to Eliza May this morning from Pocket Scene, who's going to speak to us for 10 minutes. It says here on my briefing note that Eliza May is going to talk to us about the threat to businesses. So this might be the moment where everybody gets very nervous and realizes the scale of the challenge out there as cybercrime becomes perhaps one of the biggest challenges facing the global and regional economy. So over to you, Eliza May.
Thank you, Alexis. So I'm not going to scare anyone, don't worry. I'm going to be very realistic. So I've not got any slides today just because I personally don't find them very engaging, so I just didn't use any. Okay, so my company, Pocket Seam, and that security company, really hard to spell, which is why we didn't include it. We specialise in preventing cyber attacks, helping during cyber attacks, and then helping in the recovery as well. So got that out of the way. But essentially, I'm going to try and be as quick as I can. There's various different things that can affect businesses. There's thousands of different combinations of cyber attack that can happen, and for various different reasons. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. Specifically, what affects small businesses and local companies is ransomware. That's something you need to worry about. Supply chain attacks, which is one of my favorite topics, and I'm going to go into that in a little bit more depth. Phishing and out-of-date system and software compromise. So once I've scared the crap out of you, I'll then give you a bit of information on what you can do about it for free, and you don't need to go to any company in order to prepare yourselves for that. And I'll also tell you about a 30-minute consultation that my company can provide at the end as well. So okay, so supply chain attacks. There's so many companies that think, who cares about us? We're just a small company and we are not particularly interested in. Well, okay, so I want to just cast everyone's attention to the company called Target. Okay, this big American supermarket, really, really fascinating example of how supply chain attacks are really, really dangerous. So if you supply services or a product or anything to a company that supplies to critical national infrastructure, so oil, gas, anything like that, or huge companies such as like a big supermarket chains, you really are probably a target, because these companies are ginormous and they've got a lot of money in their budget to defend themselves. So attackers look at them and go, well, that looks like a bunch of hard work. I don't really want to do that. But then they'll look at the suppliers that maybe say, advertise on their website, we work with Target, we work with Asda, and they'll go, okay, yeah, they look like a easy target. They don't have the funds to protect themselves. They don't have a team supporting them. They probably don't even have a policy and know what to do. So let's go for it. So that is what happened to a ventilation HVAC system that's a small company in the States that got a contract with Target and they supplied to Target. So these attackers looked at Target, said, no way we're going to get in there. They're massive. Let's have a look at these smaller companies. And they found this small company that supplied the air conditioning units to the stores. Okay. So what they managed to do was penetrate this company. And from doing that, they were able to access the stores themselves. So they did that. Then from accessing the stores, they realized, oh, actually, they've not really segregated their networks. They've got the payment systems, like the POS systems where you would put your card in, and the tills on the same network as the ventilation and the fridges and all these other things. So then they were able to put card skimming malware onto these payment systems. And then within a very, very short amount of time, we're able to get, I think it was between 40 and 60 million people's card details, just from attacking one really tiny heating and ventilation system company that didn't think that they were a target, and when it happened they didn't know what to do, and that nearly brought down Target, which is ginormous. So if you think of how small you are, it takes 1% of that to really wipe you out financially or really cause some significant damage to your reputation. So I'm not going to go on about ransomware. I think it's been done and done and done, and I'm sure someone here will give some advice on ransomware because it's such an interesting topic. But essentially, what I do want to discuss is how phishing and out-of-date system compromise ties into what I've just said. So a lot of the time, almost 90% of the time, attacks that do happen occur via email. I'm really sorry, there's a builder outside. I'll leave it, it's fine. So it happens through phishing. So what is phishing? So that is when a nefarious threat actor sends emails, and it might have malicious links in, it might have nothing in, and it might have false information there. There's various different things that it can have in there, and that is how they compromise a company. Now, how does that tie into supply chain attack? Okay, interesting question I just asked myself. So if let's use the scenario of Target again. If you are providing the ventilation systems, or if you are providing the tills or the yogurts, for example, or the bananas, you are then in their ecosystem of trust. So if they get an email from someone within that ecosystem, they're half expecting it, and it's not going to be blocked, and it's not going to be a real threat. So let's say that you are a small manufacturer that manufactures the lids that go on the yogurt pots that go on the shelves in a big supermarket. Don't you think you'd be significantly easier to compromise than the end target? I'm saying Target a lot here. I should have picked a different chain. But essentially, they can hop, and it takes a lot less time, and it's far more interesting to view from a forensic perspective. So so there's phishing. And that's how that ties into supply chain attacks. Out of date systems and softwares, really, really important. That tends to be the crux of getting the foothold in an environment. So really, really interesting. So what can you do about it? Okay, so as a small business, you might be thinking, all right, that all sounds really fancy. What the F do we do about that? Okay, some really, really easy things that you've got at your disposal that you're probably underutilizing. So you'll no doubt be using software and computer systems, even if it's just a laptop and Google Drive, right? Use the security settings that are available to you. Do some research, read about it. The information is always there. These huge companies, so AWS, Google, Azure, Microsoft, they all have to supply that information, and they do, and people just underutilize it. So, if type in, how to secure my email on Gmail, loads of information, and it's all free. Password managers, don't try and remember all these different passwords. Get a password manager. There are some free versions, don't trust them, but there is one called KeePass, which is free and is relatively trustworthy, but make sure it's up to date. And there's loads of really inexpensive options there as well. So all you have to do then is remember one password. Update and patching, make sure all your systems are up to date, and use VPNs as well. If you don't know what a VPN is, just type it into Google, and there's a wealth of information. I won't take up too much time, but basically a secure way of communicating. So if you are sat in Starbucks doing your work, make sure if you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you're doing it safely. So I'm going to leave it there, but I feel like I've gone about 10 minutes. Have I? Yeah, okay. So if anyone is interested in learning a bit more or wants the 30-minute consultation, absolutely free, email info@pocketscene.co.uk. If there is an option for a chat, I will put that in there, and we can arrange for you to have a free 30-minute consultation. Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Thanks so much, Lazmi. Genuinely, the big, I don't know about everybody else, the big thing for me is that when I think about the business that I run when I'm running the chamber, I think about our cybersecurity, but I don't think about it that we are part of a supply chain. And that story, well, description of what happened with Target is a useful reminder that we're all part of one big system in many ways, and that we're only as strong as the weakest link in our supply chains. That's really interesting. Thank you. Throughout the pandemic, I think we've all grown used to being on Zoom calls and people switching off their cameras when they've carried on emailing, or they've been trying to look after the kids or do domestic duties whilst also being on a call. There's quite a few people who got their cameras switched off this morning, which is absolutely fine. And there is one camera that's particularly switched off, which is from our colleague who's joined us this morning from the National Cybersecurity Centre. This is the first in my career in that I've been asked just to only refer to Roseanne by the name Roseanne. It's not appropriate for me to share with you her full name, not least because I don't know it. The powers that be in the organisation that Roseanne works for have set out protocols that say that Roseanne is not allowed to switch on her screen so that she can protect her confidentiality, which strikes me as a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Roseanne, who's going to give us some perspectives from the National Cybersecurity Centre. This is the organisation that's at the front line of British defences as we think about how we combat cybersecurity, both domestically and internationally. Over to you, Roseanne.
Hi, thank you very much for that. So I'm just going to share my screen because I do have a short presentation to go through. Hopefully that's come up now. So yeah, I work for the National Cybersecurity Centre. As you will see on the screen now, we are part of GCHQ, which is a government agency, and it's the UK's technical authority for cyber threats. So we were created in 2016 as part of a 5-year national cybersecurity strategy. This is now going through, as we come to the end of the 5 years, we're going through another one to look at how we go forward, how we can further our work that we're doing. And our motto is to make the UK the safest place to live and work online. So we support every organisation possible in the UK. We support members of the public, we support your critical national infrastructure, we support businesses of all sizes. And when incidents do occur, we try to provide effective instant response to minimise harm to the UK, help recovery and lessons learned for the future. So I was asked today to go over kind of what is the key things that businesses need to know. So on the screen, there are a number of different cyber threats. DDoS, the double DOS, is a denial of service. So legitimate users are denied access to computer services or resources, usually by overloading the service with requests. The other ones on the screen that you may not have heard of before are waterholing, which is the setting up of a fake website in order to exploit visiting users. Whaling, which is a high targeted phishing attack, so masquerading as a legitimate emails that are aimed at senior executives. And then spear phishing is a more targeted form of phishing, where the email is designed to look like it's from a person the recipient knows or trusts. So there's loads of different ones there, but at the moment, the main ones we're seeing are ransomware and phishing. Now, phishing you've probably experienced in both your work and your personal life. Maybe you've had those emails that don't look quite right, or say you've won a prize, or it could be a text message that seem to be the main ones at the moment, saying that Roma has a parcel for you that couldn't be delivered, you need to pay a fee. There's been a DPD one recently as well going around saying, saying you need to click here for your parcel to be delivered. You click on the link and it asks you for your bank details. So those kind of things that you've probably experienced in both. But ransomware is one we're seeing across all sizes and all sectors of business as well. And that is definitely rising. And I think Eliza referred to it, in supply chains as well. Supply chains is one where there is an increased risk, just because, like she said, they could target the large company, but actually it's going to take so much resource, and they've probably got the best cybersecurity anyway. So, you know, they start looking at supply chains of who supplies them to try and get in there. So just moving on quickly. Every year, the Department of Culture, Media and Sports, shortened to DCMS, runs a cybersecurity breaches survey. And the one for 2021 found that 39% of businesses report having any kind of cybersecurity breach or attack in the last 12 months. So that figure might be slightly higher due to the number of cyber incidences and attacks that go unreported through reputation. People don't know where to report it to. They don't really want to draw attention to themselves, so that number could be slightly higher. What is the effect of a cyber incident or cyber attack? Well, the average annual cost for a business that lost data or assets after breaches was £8,460. The costs can vary because it depends if you take into account the lost hours of work. Maybe you haven't been able to get if you're a manufacturer, you haven't been able to get your items to your customers, and therefore you've had to compensate them or offer a discount. It can also be if you're looking for external help, so an external company to help you resolve a cyber incident, you might be paying them as well. So the cost can vary, but that is the average. And nextly, I just wanted to show you a few more statistics from that survey, just to kind of highlight, and I think it coincides with what everybody else has been saying on this webinar. Only 14% of businesses train their staff on cybersecurity, and only 20% have tested their staff's response. But training is a really key thing. I'll show you some examples in a minute that can help your business to train your staff. You know, if you give your staff the knowledge, you know, that they're aware of what a cyber issue or attack can be, like a phishing email, then they're more likely to use that, and it could help protect your business. Only 34% of businesses have done a cyber risk assessment. So what is the likelihood of a cyber attack or a cyber breach, and how can you mitigate that, and what would the impact be on your business? A lot of businesses will do risk assessments on kind of fire, theft, flood, lost devices, damaged devices, that kind of thing, but people don't include cyber in that when actually it falls under all of those. So it's really important to get cybersecurity on your risk register. Only 31% of businesses have a business continuity plan that mentions cybersecurity. So going back to the fire, theft or flood, if you had a fire in your office and all of your network was damaged, your computers were damaged, how would you run your business? What would you do? How would you continue that? How would you contact your customers? Is the data stored elsewhere? Is it on a cloud service? Those kinds of things. And I think sometimes it's because you can't see cybersecurity, it's hard to feel that it's relevant, but it is actually relevant under all of those. So it's worth revising your business continuity plans and just seeing whether cyber comes into those. With the COVID pandemic, only 23% of businesses covered home working in their cybersecurity policy. For a lot of businesses, people working from home is a higher risk, especially if you're dealing with confidential information or sensitive information. You know, we quite often work in bedrooms or something, and in the summer it was hot, you had the windows open, but who walking past could pick up on what information you're saying? What are you doing? Maybe you've got a partner and you leave notebooks or something out. Could they use that information? Maybe you're starting to use your personal devices for work, but is there a risk that you could accidentally send the wrong document to somebody? And then, as it says there, 47% of businesses have staff using their personal devices for work, which, you know, is fine. We know that a lot of businesses do that, but you need to have policies and procedures in place to help protect you as a business and also them as well. So what can you do to help? So this slide's a bit chaotic. I will hopefully send through links afterwards, highlighting and giving you links to all of the things mentioned here. So we talked about training. One thing that the NCSC has developed is the top tips for staff and cybersecurity for small organisations e-learnings. These can be built into your own training platforms, or they can be completed on the website. They take about 20 minutes, and you can stop and start them as you wish. There's no requirement to sit there and do it all if you're busy. One thing I should mention is that all the advice and guidance on here, it does not have a cost associated. It is all free. It's all available to everybody, no matter what size organisation you are. Everything is available. The only thing that there is a cost associated with is the certification for Cyber Essentials, but you can still implement and use the readiness tool without a cost being associated with that. Some other things that you might find useful is exercise in a box. There are actually a number of exercises on here, from a simulation exercise of a cyber incident all the way down to kind of 15-minute micro exercise, and they cover a range of topics. You've got supply chain software security, supply chain exercise, you've got ransomware, phishing, passwords, all sorts of things, and we're always updating them with new. And if you feel that there's nothing on there that suits your organisation, please get in touch, because we're always keen to develop that and make sure there's something for everybody. So response recovery guide, that's looking at your business continuity. Cyber aware, it's a great one. It's, if you haven't done cyber security before, it's a great entry level. You can get a tailored action plan as well, depending on how you answer the questions. It will come up with solutions and how-to guides for you. We've got the NCSC Small Organisations newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter, and basically covers what you need to know from the NCSC this month. Refers to different pieces of guidance. There might be our own webinars that we're doing. There might be surveys in there where you can give your say of what would help your business, and that comes out every month. It's about a 5-minute read. We've got threat videos as well, which highlight kind of what is ransomware, what is phishing, and then security culture is referring to empowering your staff. So if they receive an email they're not sure about, it's saying that, query it with somebody, make sure you check it. And even though if it is legitimate this time, it might not be next time. So it's just kind of encouraging them to report it. But as I said, there's loads of different guidance on there. We've even got specific supply chain security guidance as well. But hopefully the links will be shared after this webinar, and you can access that in your own time as you see fit. But that is everything from me today. So I will hand back to Alexis.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. What a great slide. There's a huge amount of resource there for businesses. Did you mention that you might be able to share that with us afterwards? Just for
Yeah, I'll be able to share all the links with you afterwards.
Brilliant.
Yes,
that'd be really helpful. Really helpful. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to go to our next speaker, and then we'll kind of have a bit of a conversation as a wide list of participants. Really pleased to welcome Danielle this morning. We've got
I have got some slides on resources. Rosanna did a really great slide on it, so it's just really covering what she did, but it's all free, and it's really great to have a test out. It's not necessarily that you need to be an expert in it or anything like that. I just want to cover the police cyber alarm. So this is funded by the government, and it helps organisations to understand and monitor any threats of malicious cyber activity. So it acts as like a CCTV, so it monitors the data seen by a business connected to the internet. It doesn't see any of the content of the network traffic. It only logs, monitors the logs to the traffic to identify any suspicious activity, and it's designed to protect personal data, trade assets, intellectual property. I can send an email after this just with the resources and some more information if you want that round, and you just need to sign up on their website, and it does have a great video on there as well. So we do have our own Twitter page, so we do put personal advice on there, so it's for your personal life and business as well. There is my email address, so if you do want to, if you don't have any questions now, if you want to send me an email, or if you want me to put you in contact with the Yorkshire and Humberside Regional Organised Crime Unit, that's absolutely fine. I've got to cover the North East Business Resilience Centre. Unfortunately, they wasn't able to come, so I'm going to quickly cover them. I'm not an expert in it, but I will definitely try my best. So the North East Business Resilience Centre, they are made up of police, academia, trusted partners. They're a non-for-profit company, and their aim is to help support and businesses protect themselves against cybercrime and fraud. So they do have a free core membership. These are just outlining on the slide what you get with the free membership. They've got paid ones as well. If you want to have a look on their website just to see what benefits you could get from them, it could be something that is suitable for you. The fortnightly e-newsletters is really great. It's a great information. It's in like bite-sized chunks. They've got blogs on as well and that are really informative, and they've got like a jargon buster that's really great as well. We have got some services, so they are got students that they're working with that are ethical hacking students from Northumbria and Sheffield Hallam University. So they can do that at a reduced cost for these services, which is great. So they've got like the vulnerability assessment, so they're able to scan and review internal networks and systems to see if there are any weaknesses. The web application vulnerability assessment, so that is able to review any websites or web services to see if there are any weaknesses, and if there are, then they're able to tell you about the risks that are associated with them and able to give you some steps so that you're able to protect yourself. And then the bottom two, that's just reviewing and security policy and cyber business continuity, just to give you some feedback on that. They do have contact details. If you have a look on their website, it's got lots and lots of information on there that is really useful. They have their own Twitter page, and that's their email address as well. So if you want to take a note down of that. And that's kind of end of my slides. I feel like I really sped through them, so I'm sorry if I've gone a bit too fast, but thank you.
I don't think you went fast at all. Thank you ever so much, Danielle. And you say you're not an expert in the NEBRC, but I think that was pretty comprehensive overview, so thank you ever so much for that.
Thank you.
Genuinely. Again, just one of the things that really resonated with me. So Mike, I've been personally and professionally, I've had attacks on systems that I'm responsible for. And I'm really struck by you saying about reporting it. If somebody broke into my office, I'd immediately report it to the police, but perhaps it's not as the trigger to report an attack on your cyber systems is perhaps not as quick to report it. So a valuable lesson to give good people like you the data so you know what's actually going on that's really helpful. All right. Welcome back, Sam. Just for those people who are wondering why the recording stopped and it started again, this Zoom call wasn't the subject of a cyber attack. Sam's internet decided just to crash. So we had a slight blip, but thanks ever so much to Will at Sheffield Chamber for sorting that out. I'm still intrigued as to when Sam left, the hosting of this call immediately went over to Roseanne, which I think is quite interesting. Maybe that's just a system that we don't understand. But anyway, we've got a bit of time. And I hope you're feeling engaged and interested and have got questions. Otherwise, I'm going to have to spin out this event for the next 22 minutes and just keep talking. So you've heard from professional experts. So Eliza, who spends all day grappling with these issues in her company and protecting clients prior to, during, and after an attack. We've heard from Roseanne, who's thinking about these things from a national perspective, and then we just heard from Danielle about how the local police think about cybercrime and support. Genuinely, your time is precious. I'm not sure about you, but it's not every day we have the opportunity to speak to the police and a representative from the NCSC about cybercrime. So use this as an opportunity to ask questions, make any comments. If you want to get my attention, you've got two choices: wave your hands on the screen, or just use the little button that's normally on Zoom to raise your hand. And don't be shy.
I actually put a question in.
Oh, you have, Eliza. You're absolutely right. Forgive me. This is for you. I don't know if you saw this, Roseanne. This was from Eliza just asking really interesting question. So last March, a lot of companies, in fact, nearly every company went in a matter of days from being in offices to working remotely and had to do that very, very quickly. From your vantage point, from your colleagues' vantage point, what are the benefits and risks associated with that? Have we seen companies wake up to their cyber infrastructure because they've had to rely on it during the pandemic, or have we seen the fast move to remote working present more risks? So that was for you, Roseanne, but equally Danielle and anybody else on the call be interested in a response to Eliza's question, but I will focus that on Roseanne if she's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. So no, it's a great question, really. A lot of businesses, as you said, move very suddenly to working from home or online when they hadn't done it before, in order to keep their businesses going. And as expected, with COVID was the main focus. Cybersecurity wasn't, and the NCSC completely understands that. So it was a benefit to businesses. They could keep trading when they couldn't be open on the high street or whatever. And we produced some what we call COVID-19 guidance, all about home working, business security online, those kinds of things. And it's never too late to implement those steps. So for businesses that have moved online, probably about 18 months ago now with the COVID pandemic, or are still working online, please check out the NCSC COVID-19 guidance. You'll find it on our website. There's 3 different pieces on there, but it's never too late to start implementing the steps. So I'd really urge people to do that. So yes, it is a risk, but there are things you can put in place like 2-factor authentication, doing your backups, doing your updates, those kinds of things.
That's good. Thank you so much. Again, we had to move in a hurry. Sheffield Chamber certainly moved in a hurry. I think we all did, didn't we? Any other questions from participants? If you don't want to speak, please do put something in the chat. I'll give it a couple of seconds because
could I just make a comment, Alexis?
Of course you can do, Peter. Good morning.
It was just regarding the survey at the beginning, where it was discussing about if you suffered an attack, who would you turn to? And interestingly, and I think because I hadn't seen the survey or I hadn't filled it out anyway, I didn't know what the answers were. And one of the answers, or one of the non-answers, was would you contact your insurance broker? So just for people on the call, and Peter, I work for Proactive, and it's more to do with, we have a lot of clients and we see it week in, week out. He keeps suffering from these things. And actually we are our first point of contact that people come to. And a lot of people that either are not aware or don't realize that there are covers out there that can provide protection or provide help. And really, for me, the real help that comes from these covers is that you almost get a 24/7 response that can help you. And so I think it's an educational piece that people don't necessarily understand, that, because a lot of people will go, yeah, I'm going to make sure I insure my building for fire, but then nobody thinks, oh, should I insure my building for my systems? And you're more likely to suffer an attack, a cyber attack anyway, than you are to probably suffer a fire. So it's just a bit of food for thought, really, there. So
that's a good point. No,
I was going to
absolutely.
say on that, do you find, though, I think his name's gone, was it Jack?
No, it's Peter.
Peter, I'm sorry, Peter. Do you find that a lot of companies that do go down the route of getting insurance have the attitude of, oh, well, we're paying for insurance, so we don't need to do anything else? That's what I've come across in industry. We're fine. We actually don't need a SIEM, or we don't need to have multi-factor authentication, because we've got a insurance policy. And you just think, like, what on earth? That's like getting, I'm not saying that the insurance industry is wrong, not at all. I think the attitude needs to change of the customers of it in a lot of cases. It's like having insurance on your property and then just leaving all the windows and doors open and going on holiday.
I would suggest it's the other way around, and we usually find people who are more worried about risk will already be doing those things as well, and then they'll add it on top. And you wouldn't necessarily be able to get the cover anyway if you were not doing the right things. And it's the same with we're getting into an insurance thing here, but same with the windows and doors. If you left your windows and doors open, you wouldn't be covered. So you've got to do the right things, and it's all about going hand in hand together with each other and having these. So I would always suggest to someone, you make sure that you have your right procedures in place in terms of your two-factor authentication and things like that, because that's actually the really important bits. The insurance is only there as a very, very last resort, but sometimes you do need it. That's why we sort of talk about it. So yeah,
it's a strange one. I'd be interested. I don't want to hijack the call. I'd be interested to get your perspective of like the insurance that comes with Cyber Essentials, for example, because you only need to self-assess. You don't actually need to be checked or audited. You just self-assess, and then you get access to, I think it's £25,000 worth of cyber insurance. But then not the majority, but a lot of companies that do that self-assessment don't actually tell the truth on it. So I don't know. And then they go, well, we've got the insurance, so it's fine. And you're like, well, it's not, because they're actually not going to pay out because you've not done all those things that you said that you've done. Anyway, I just find it a really, really interesting topic that the industry is kind of going down the route of insurance, which is sensible in a lot of ways, and just how there's such a dichotomy there of we've got the insurance, we don't need to be secure, and then it's interesting. Your perspective on it's interesting.
It is interesting. It's not just relying on insurance.
No.
It's really interesting. I've got a question from Carrie in the chat, and I've also got Will with his hand up. So I'm going to go to Carrie's question first, because I think that came first. Will. So Carrie from Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber, just on comment that she gets from her members is an expectation that tech suppliers, and she cited Apple as one example, that they automatically make individuals compliant and safe. So they kind of thought that technology providers and software providers are doing the hard work for us. Should we rely on them? Who would like to, recognizing that the call is being recorded, who would like to comment on whether or not we should rely on Apple and others for the software and the computers equipment that they provide? Who would like to
I'm
pick that
happy
up?
to, but I also recognize that I've just been gabbing my mouth off, so probably.
Well, you are a speaker, so it kind of comes with the territory, I suppose.
Okay, so I think I mentioned before about making the use of security settings that are native to the systems and softwares that you're using. So, Apple, Windows, Linux, they all put a great deal of effort into making sure that there's options for advanced security and minimal security and all these different payoffs. And it's up to you to use them. It's not up to them to enforce that you use them. So, for example, having a password and encryption on your laptop, you don't get it from the shop and that's all on there. It's open. You can start using it on day one. However, they would advise in their documentation, in their small print, that you use it. It is not their problem if you don't. Equally, if Apple were to release an update and you weren't to install it, that's not Apple's problem if you think you get attacked via that vulnerability in that software or that firmware. That's your fault. Just to be blunt, that's your fault.
So we shouldn't rely on them unless we follow their instructions.
Well, yeah, but then also in a network, like not just at home, but in a network, you've got to take into account the interaction between that laptop that might be Apple and then a Cisco router, for example, and then a Windows server. All of those things interact in different ways and use different protocols. And so simply going, oh, I've got Apple, we're fine, is a cop-out. But unfortunately, a lot of companies do it.
Sure they do. Will, you've patiently had your hand up.
So my question is, so aside from, and this is, the whole panel, so whoever would like to sort of take this one, aside from the obvious things that businesses can do to kind of make their, cybersecurity regime, more kind of resilient, what would you say is the biggest kind of obvious blind spot, that they could address quickly? If you said this is something you need to sort overnight and it's going to, make the difference, might make the difference between you being an easy target and not. Is it training for staff? Is it, kind of, I guess, educating people about phishing? What's the single biggest thing you would say that people might not have considered if you just had to pick one?
Great question. I'm going to ask each of the panelists if they might want to cover that. Danielle, if there was one thing from your perspective that one thing that businesses should do, perhaps that they're not doing.
I think it's around raising the awareness of cybercrime and just the simple steps that we can put in place. It doesn't have to be, something that's really technical. I think some people feel like it's just the IT side that they need to deal with it, but it's everyone's responsibility. And it kind of answers a bit of the question of Mike, if you agree if the weakest link is the individuals, which I don't think it is. It's just trying to create that culture where security is in the forefront of people's mind, and people are, going to make mistakes and things like that, but it's not on purpose, and it's really raising that education around it and not having that blame culture, because if something does happen, then, you know, people start to over-analyze every email that they get, everything that they do, and that's not productive at all. So it's just raising like strong passwords, something really simple, two-factor authentication, and it's just making it accessible for everyone and tailored as well, so everyone really does try. But I hope I'm not waffle too much, but yeah.
Eliza, one thing that you think businesses should focus on that perhaps they're not, one thing.
I think limiting access to things that you don't need. So if burying accounts does not need access to the company Twitter account, you shouldn't have access to it because it could have reputational damage. Similarly, if the marketing department can access accounts or documentation about procurement or something they shouldn't be able to, then they shouldn't have access to it. And that goes from documents, systems, softwares, everything. If you're not supposed to have access to it and you don't need it for your job, you shouldn't be accessing it. Equally, if you're an administrator, your access should be limited to administering only the products and services that you should be able to administer, and you should be banned from using it for everyday purposes. So limiting access,
Great.
I would say, will save you a shit ton of headache. If you were to get compromised and an attacker was compromised account that had limited access, not much is going to happen anyway, and it's totally free. So do that.
It's really interesting. Really interesting. Roseanne, from your vantage point and thinking about the data you shared with us earlier, one thing that you think that businesses should be focused on that perhaps they're not?
I think for me, it's about backups. That's one thing that may save you if you suffer from a ransomware attack. And a lot of people, they have this on their system, on the computer when they buy a new computer or something. There'll be an option about backups or updates to do them automatically. By default, they're usually turned off when you purchase a computer, and it's your responsibility to go and turn that on. So I'd really urge everybody to just go and check that that is turned on, that you do your automatic backups and you have your automatic updates as well.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to the chat. So Mike Bullivant asked the question about the weakest link within the company. Our individual is truly the weakest link. I think, Eliza, you picked up on that point. What else can we do beyond training and education and to limit risk and limiting access? So only giving people access to resources, maybe one thing that I've certainly, that strikes me as a business owner, kind of going, does everybody need to have access to everything? How do you lock things down? I'm just going to, Mike, I'm not jumping over your question, but kind of as we've touched on that topic a bit already, I'm then going to jump to Graham Stanley's question about, and again, I think I might be coming to Eliza here because it's of technical nature. What about the issues of the backdoor set up by the Windows systems, which is great if the user locks the computer out, it locks themselves out, but it's also a vulnerability. Is that possible to close this door? So what do we think about backdoor systems that are being encoded into computer software systems? They're helpful when you have a problem, but they can also present a potential security risk. Is that right, Eliza?
I just want to apologise for the background noise.
We can't hear it. I can't.
You can't? Oh,
Yeah.
That's good. I was just like, fuck off. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it does pose a security risk. And, if you're doing something and you're working on something private and it pops up and says, this has just crashed, do you want to send a report? Probably don't, because it will send as much information as it can get hold of. But no, I think you're probably better off having the support, having automated backups than not doing it. If you have a process in place which is solid, and you have, quite larger companies will have a cycle where they'll have they'll patch all the updates in one go. Maybe they'll do it once a quarter or once a month or something, but their systems are relatively hard to get into. That's a method of defense that has some sense to it. If you're not going to be making use of automated backups where the vendor can just deploy the backup without your say so, if you're not going to be making use of that, there needs to be something else in place. You need to have some sort of process where you're deploying a fix or a patch of some sort on your own. And if you're not equipped to do that, then you should really be using automated backups, whether it's on your website or whatever. Really, you should.
Right. Good advice.
There is a security risk to the majority of things out there, but the only way that you're never going to you can be confident you're never going to be a victim of a cyber attack is if you totally turn off all your computers and go back to pen and paper, which you're not going to do. There's always a trade-off.
That's a really nice phrase to perhaps finish the comment. There's always a trade. There's nothing that we can absolutely do unless we perhaps go back to the Stone Age to limit and eliminate all this. It's just about how we manage that, which is why this is for me a genuinely fascinating conversation about how we use software and systems to be more efficient and effective, but we also manage the risk that comes with those. Right. So I had one job this morning, which was to try and make sure that this session finishes on time, which I think I'm on target to achieve. So yay for me. Before I say thanks to you all for joining, and in particular our great panel of speakers, I just thought I'd try and sum up what I've taken from this morning and what the chambers in South Yorkshire will be doing to follow up on this event. Listening to the presentations and during the discussions, I've written down 4 words. Well, actually 3, but I've used 1 word twice. Get educated and get organized. It's really great to hear from Danielle and Roseanne about the number of free resources that are out there that businesses can access from the national agencies and local agencies, and how that can support getting good quality advice from private companies who can provide security systems and also training companies such as Eliza's. So my big thing I've written down to remind myself is get educated, both as business leaders in our businesses, but also to help our staff get educated, and get organized, in that there is no silver bullet to this. And that involves thinking about the systems we use, the software that we use, limiting access, and then Peter's really helpful comment of thinking about the trade-offs and links to how we then insure against the threats that we face running our businesses. As Sam Christmas has put on the chat, what we're going to do as the 3 chambers in South Yorkshire is everybody who's registered for this event will get a follow-up email with all of the useful links that the panelists have spoken about today, so that you can use those resources in your businesses and organizations, which we hope you will find helpful. There's going to be a recording of this call, albeit in 2 parts, so I'll leave one of my colleagues to splice them together so it looks seamless. Which leaves me with the final task, which is genuinely to thank all of our speakers this morning. Steve from Policy Points, who very helpfully kind of set the scene with the data that we've got back from our survey, the quarterly economic survey, from Eliza May from Pocket Team, who's talked passionately about all of the challenges and how we can address them within our individual businesses. Roseanne, who unfortunately we've not been able to see, but respect her privacy, but to thank her for all of the remarks you made about the national picture, but the really helpful slide, I thought, with all of the resources that are available to businesses. And then last but certainly not least, thank you ever so much, Danielle, for not only covering off your role in South Yorkshire Police, but also providing us with a quick run through of the North East Business Resilience Centre. So genuinely, thanks to all of our speakers. If we're in a room, we'd probably all now offer a round of applause. Still not quite figured out how you do that on a Zoom call, but thanks from me. There we go. We will be in touch by email. Enjoy the rest of your day, and don't reply to any suspicious emails until you've checked that they've come from your colleagues. Have a good day. Take care. Thanks ever so much, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Roseanne. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.